Welcome back to the Winding Lane bracelet. We're almost at the very end. I have 2 beads left on my yarn, and that tells me that I need to make my final half shell before I make the button. I happened to know how many beads I needed to string because I've made a couple of these bracelets already and I learned by trial and error, but you might want to string extra beads. And how to know when the bracelet is nearly long enough is to put it around your wrist. And when you have about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch gap between the edge of the button loop and the edge of the last shell that you've made, then you know it's time to make your final half shell and then make the button. So again, to make that final half shell, we're not going to do 6 forward chain loops, we're going to do 4. And if you want to skip ahead to the button portion of this video, you certainly may. But this is such a quick project that it will only take me a few seconds longer to make my final half shell. Anchor it to the previous shell, pull through all the loops, draw down my final 2 beads, chain 1 to anchor the beads. Now we're ready to make a button. To do this, turn the work, and without making any extra stitches, insert your hook as though you were anchoring it to the last shell, which is what you're doing. Slip stitch to that last shell in the 2 strands of the row end, and now we're going to make a button. Chain 3, yarn over, and find the back loop of the first chain. We want to make 5 partial crochets in that back loop. What we're doing is a 5 DC together in that back loop, so 5 partial crochets. And I'm on number 4, number 5. Now take your finger and from the back push so that it bulges towards you. Now yarn over, draw through all the loops on the hook. If you can do it without dropping your yarn like I just nearly did, pull on the yarn to tighten it up, and we've got a little button. Now turn the button over, and from the back insert the hook into that same strand, and my yarn's splitting a bit, I'm sorry. Slip stitch together. Now we're going to do one last trick to make our button. We're going to chain 4 and cut the yarn, pull the yarn tail through, tighten it down, and very gently from the opposite side of the button insert your hook and find the hole at the base of that chain 3. Pull everything right through the button gently. What you're doing is you're stuffing the button with that little short chain. The end of it might poke out the other side, and if it does, very carefully snip the thread and push it back into the button. It will go back in there if you give it a gentle push. Now we have a little button stuffed with its own thread, and we're ready to try on a bracelet. Oh, I have not yet woven in this end, but how many of us ever stop to weave in the end before we try something on? And of course this is a little awkward for me because I have the camera in between me and my hands. There we go. Pretty little bracelet. I'll come back in a minute and show you what they look like all stacked up on my wrist.